Engineering designers know little bit about machinery, but machinist is the guy that makes the part. If you can make an automated machinist, that would be ideal.
What's the difference between not having expectations and just not giving a shit? I think there's two different attitudes.
Yes, they are. Well,
you can
the way children are brought up. If you bring them up to give a shit about what they do, and they see the advantage of it, they will not be, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
It's only if it doesn't affect them too much. But they will be concerned because earthquakes in Japan can affect people here. So they'll be curious and want to know what they can do. I can't see children raised without any connection to the outside world. People who don't give a shit have no dependency on those things. Or they don't see the relationship.
Yeah.
Would you say that? There are people that don't take out any kind of insurance, even though they can afford it, because they think the Lord will take care of them. I would say in time, even religious people will give up religion, the more better educated they are. With reference, I don't know if the books on semantic touch religion, I don't remember, but I guess they do. They have to. So to make people sane, you have to touch religion. You have to say it's a less sane approach, but you have to arrange the words so that the religious person can identify with what you're saying. That's the art. It's called the art. Medicine is an art, not a science, because they can't say when we put a replacement in your body, it'll work forever. It breaks down, sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes pills that work on one person don't work on another person. So you have to have some kind of a reference of that person. Chemical, are you allergic to things? Build a whole list on all people so doctors can make more appropriate decisions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you have to gather information on people. Well, in the old days it would take files and files. Today you can do it on a small disk. You know what I mean? Because they're probably numerical equivalents which are much better than a long dissertation on a Pithecanthropus erectus. You know what I mean? It's a lot of words that can be super simplified. When medicine becomes a science, there's some aspects of it that are scientific, but a lot of it is not. When it becomes a science, they can tell you whether they can help you or not yet. We don't know. Well, what the hell do they do if they don't know? They still charge you. See, in China you pay your doctors when you're well, very little. When you get sick they get no pay. So their incentive is to find answers. But in the future, we have to define what life is, why some cells morph or become different, and the dangers of genetic splicing, all that stuff. But today, they can't afford to do all that. It would cost you infinite amount of money to have surgery done if all that were paid for by doctors. But that's the rules of the game, you know what I mean? If we don't change those, we're going to have trouble. It's the problems that generate what you call thinking. You want your way out of the problem. If you walk across a log, across a canyon, you can fall off. If you crawl across, or you build a rope above so you can hang on. I would say they went through all of that. The history of sanity is based on error. Sane behavior is less error. Saner behavior is less error, but it doesn't mean no
That
error.
doesn't necessarily mean that a primitive man was insane for where he came from.
No, not at all. Everybody is perfectly well adjusted where they're coming from. If you know what that means. That's all you have to have. But if you blame a person for their behavior, it's like assuming that they have free will and they're evil. A perfect person that's been picked on all their life is apt to pick on other people to maintain social status. If you're brought up as a kid, you're more apt to have better use of what you learn.
Yeah.
But as an adult, I look for the sum total of their environmental exposure. I have no control of what anybody does. Their background, to a large extent, determines that. Well, when you talk to people a little bit, you say, are you interested in what I'm talking about? Because not at all. Cut out. I'm interested in business, in sales.
Yeah.
That's all you can say. Because my mother wasn't open to many things until I opened those things.
Yeah.
But normal people tend to react to words. I'm having a difficult time. You are? Where? If you're having a difficult time, do you have the means to control those events? No. Then you will have a continuous difficult time.
Yeah.
If you can't pay your rent, your landlord puts you out. That's a result of an established operation. If your landlord is a humanist, he will say, look, there's a recession on, you can stay another 2 months, try to find a job, because I can't pay taxes on my building if you don't. You know what I mean? If he tells you the situation, he said, I'd rather live in a resource-based economy, where I don't have to do that. I think a lot of people would rather not be cruel if they didn't have to be. Cruelty is a survival mechanism. I'll call it cruelty when you put a person out.
Newborn chicks in a nest peck each other.
Yes.
You know,
Chickens peck each other.
there may be mechanisms in biological
that's
systems.
inborn in the chicken.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yes, the chicken pecks each other because there's a limited amount of food. If there was food spread out widely, so chickens didn't have to concentrate on one bowl, the pecking order may not occur. It's a potential, a propensity. The organism has a propensity to do this when they fall. You know, so they don't hit their face or head.
Even though they never took a fall.
No, they have to fall.
So if a child is falling...
Yeah, a child always braces themselves.
Will the first time the child falls, will the arms go out before it hits the floor automatically?
Yes.
If the head is going towards the floor?
Yes. But you got to remember that the child has had push experiences. It pushes the body this way and that way, and when the floor approaches, it pushes it away. If it pushes on anything, it has a propensity toward nurturing actions that prevent it. But if a child were brought up in a gravity-free environment, they would have totally different reactions. If engineers, say, were brought up on a planet that had 4 times the gravity, all the engineering standards and measurements would be different. And if he came here, he'd first have to establish, what have we here? Do you know what that means? I don't know. Then he'd have to measure all those things and change his calculations to fit the new circumstances. So, changing environment is very good. Because when scientists get to particle physics, if they can't manipulate the particles, they can't do much with it. And there is a microscope that has a different name. I forgot the name of it. It has field motions in it. I used to retain billions of bits of information.
The short-term capacity to absorb
yes.
is difficult more.
Well, as you get older, it seems that the older thalamic stuff tends to remain. Like bracing yourself for a fall, that tends to remain.
Seems like that's a backwards evolutionary step almost.
Well, unless the body was more receptive. Right then you protect yourself. You tend to protect yourself. If there's fire, you tend to run away from it. When you learn something at 17, the pathways form in the brain. Every time you sing My Country 'Tis of Thee, there's a new association. Do you know that? So you have repetitions by the billions. How are you, Mary? How are you, George? How are you, Sam? And every time you say, how are you, Sam, there's a new path form, because you just see Sam. But you have thousands of paths that are useless. They're repetitious paths.
Yeah.
Whereas a computer could not build thousands of repetitive paths. It can use one path and have a more efficient storage system.
Yeah.
But as you get older, if you don't use it and it rots away, if I lecture on certain subjects quite a bit, I form new paths on the same subject. I don't refer back to the old brain path. Can you understand that?
Yeah. But yet everybody's brain is, this culture, saturated with pathways that are
lots of repetition.
Yeah.
Can you understand that? Good morning is repetition, and it's a new pathway. Whenever you say, Roxanne, get me a glass of water, that's a new pathway in my head. And Roxanne hears that, and then she gets me a glass of water. But if I were 17, she'd get your own glass of water. The reaction would be different. You know, it's a little more difficult for me to get a glass of water than it is for you to get me a glass of water. Unless you're very tired. You say, listen, I just came back from a 40-mile hike. Get your own water. Give me a reason for your rejection, you know.
Yeah.
We tend to help people. There's a tendency.
Yeah.
If a person has difficulty, we tend to help them. Otherwise, there'd be no people merging together if we didn't have a propensity towards some degree of identification.
Well, there's got to be a pretty good evolutionary explanation for those mechanisms.
It has survival value.
Yeah.
That's the explanation. The pituitary gland is a major control mechanism for all internal secretion.
Yeah.
That is believed. So if the pituitary gland gets weaker and wears out, then it doesn't regulate. And if you have, if cells multiply, say 75 times, and then they stop for another mechanism. There are beliefs today that alligators can live forever because they don't run into the death of cells. They have simple reflexes. They just go for food and they go underwater, but they don't wonder about the nature of their environment or whether it's going to rain today or whether there'll be enough pond water. They don't review anything. A dog might sit at the window, wait for the old man to come back at near 5 o'clock. Near the end of the day, dogs do have anticipatory behavior. You ever see a dog do that? Wait near the door at 5 o'clock? Well, they're not that close. They're waiting at 3 all the way to 5 because they're not good time binders, as Korzybski calls it. You know, Korzybski points out a lot of different things. He said man is a time binder, you know, where most animals, there's no Wednesday, Thursday, Monday, they don't bind time. And an elephant will help an elephant in distress. Do you ever see that? 2 elephants will get alongside an elephant that's injured and help him. They know those things. They have a brain that's different. It has more associative systems, but it doesn't have. It also is very temperamental, elephants. They can suddenly change. Dogs do not suddenly change unless they're a certain breed of dog. You know what I mean? Different internal secretion. So you can do a book on the range of behavior. Certain dogs are good at sheep herding. They learn it fast. Other dogs do not. That has to do with glandular heredity mechanisms. But they are not born with sheep herding instincts. They learn that. They bark and the sheep moves. If they bark and the sheep came at them and kicked them, they'd have a different reaction. So bulldogs, as I understand it, used to be ferocious, you know, but today they salivate a great deal and they lick your hand, and they're very different. Domesticated animals, we kept taking the animal that is less aggressive and selling them. People didn't want animals that didn't learn anything, that would shit in the house continuously, even though you took them outside. Well, if you took them outside enough and made a painful association with shitting, they wouldn't shit. But some dogs learn faster than others. Those are the dogs we select. And the same with students. But their environment determines, to a larger extent, what they learn. So, like if you say, your boss is old too, isn't he? He's about 50 years old or 60?
Oh no, he's about 75.
Yeah, he's less apt to learn new things.
No,
because he reviews the old things. He builds millions of pairs, stainless steel brain.
Really?
He could not adapt to a changed environment.
Not well.
If he walked into the African jungle, he would be at a loss. Well, there's a lot of people like him. I find that to be true of many wealthy people. They're, if you want to use words like they're brilliant in investing. That is, they have a good knowledge of that.
When you get to know that.
That's when the bankers started to jump out of windows,
Yeah.
when their process no longer worked.
Yeah.
They feel they let their family down,
Yeah.
and they can't face them if the bank failed. If you've been in banking for years and you believe it helps you support your family, they have no escape. Like your boss has no escape. He doesn't have other variations. I would say a world traveler is more inclined to take an excursion through Africa and know that he's on an excursion. And that the bodyguards that take him hiking in Sweden, they're professional mountain climbers that take you up a mountain, and they know how to climb a mountain, and they advise you. What are they called? Do you remember?
Sherpa.
Okay, so you got different professions that have associations, hard associations in that area. But if tourists didn't come to your country too much, your profession becomes painful because you can't exercise it. Do you understand? A lawyer wouldn't know what to do. When a man retires who's been an investment banker, unless he advises people or teaches at a university, he becomes senile. Can you understand that?
Yeah.
Because he doesn't use his head anymore. So they're very good people that become senile because they retire early. And they go and they play cards. That's what they do. Or chess. Or they go to the golf course and whack the ball 1,000 feet and then try to find it, which is a ridiculous thing to do. But I would say that's a brain disorganizer. Baseball games would be a repeat, always a repeat. I am inclined to repeat myself if I meet new people. But I have so many areas that I have to work on feedback from people when they ask questions. I have to slant it toward that person. So it's more neural association than less. But there are, like all professions, a butcher knows how to cut meat in all different areas. If he retires early, if he's been a butcher most of his life, there's a case for senility. Maybe Alzheimer's disease may be due to lack of use of the brain. I don't know that for sure, but it could be. I think I told you what I believe left-handedness or right-handed people. If you feed them on the left breast, if one arm is free, it'll learn more. build more associations than the arm that's not able to move too much. I think it may be due to that. Although they say some people are right-brained and some are left-brained, I don't know how much of that is induced. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm very great propensity toward environment somehow affecting those things. It's hard for me to imagine a person born left-handed. It's easier for me to understand if their motion is inhibited. That's why I use a twin-headed person. One head is usually a little better than the other in associative memory, and that's the head that becomes dominant. Did you read the case of that guy with the head that whispered such things as in hell because he hated that head? Did you ever read that?
Anomalies and Curiosities in Medicine.
There's a section, a guy with two heads, and the other head was insane, he said. And it could be if he took over, the other head would become insane.
Yeah.
I know kids that I've known that were great intellectual giants, and when they got older, they were put in a home, and all the people there were dead intellectually. And this guy could only live on his own feedback, and he became paranoid. You know, if you have an intellect and you're put in a home, with guys like your boss, everybody there like that, you would live in a desert of intellect, you know what I mean? And either you'd have to rely on yourself and stay away from those people.
Yeah.
You could visit the guy, but as long as you can leave when you want to, you're all right. So you have to start, I would use the word thinking along those lines to help you understand better. And the more you understand, the less people you can associate with, unless you break them in to this way of thinking. Then they become extensible to you. They tell you what's new and what isn't new, and they act as a stimulus. So we need a lot of stimulus in a world where you provide home, food, clothing to people and health care. Then you need stimulus to keep them going. Otherwise they freeze at a certain level. So when somebody doesn't react appropriately, I just say they can't at this time. That's why it's hard to take a gay person and say stop being gay, because there's a lot of tracks there associated with male companionship. You know, I don't say it's wrong or bad. I have no
established at a certain time.
Yes. And there are some people that are bisexual, just as strong sexually one way or the other.
Yeah.
And you know what a necrophiliac is?
Yeah.
Person has sex with the dead, they tend to get a job in a funeral home. It's easier. Do you understand?
Yeah. They
can disrobe the person and play around with them because they have no resistance. So a necrophiliac is a person that's been exposed to different aspects of sex. There are many people that jerk off over pictures in a magazine, and that's like a dead person, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it depends on how much deprivation a person's exposed to. I'm more inclined to think of them as deprived people, deprived of many different aspects of sex or something else. And if you understand that, you can, to a large extent, you cannot explain, if you're a necrophiliac, to a judge why you had sex with the dead. The judge says, you're a nut, you need hospitalization. The judge can't conceive of that. But the person could be sane in other areas. Can you understand that?
Okay.
So there are many people in mental institutions that have nothing wrong with the brain, just the way it was equipped and nurtured, if you can understand what I'm saying. So and during military training, I missed the target by 4 feet because I didn't want to be sent overseas. The other guys were trying to hit the target. They were shipped out a week later, you know what I mean? And you have to do what you have to do. When you're with your boss, you can't behave as you would, nor can you share values. But believing that you can will give you a headache. When your temples start beating, you know what I mean, you've had enough. You know what tics are?
Yeah.
Where a guy has to come and stop that, people say to him, like he can stop it right then and there. Yeah. You know, people can't stop those things. Now, like tics, you have a value system that concludes one way of, it's erroneous, but there's no way to tell you that your values are erroneous. And if they do, you say, well, I'm as good as you any day. You know, you come back with the wrong thing. Because you live in a society that reinforces fucked up values. That's very hard to understand. How can society be fucked up? It's easier for you to be fucked up. Do you understand that? So, I can't get up and lecture before a group of scientists. I can do it, but I don't think they'll turn around. Because scientists too get locked onto a system. So don't be disappointed in some scientists. They're as rigidly fucked up as other people. It seems to me that if there's a scientific foundation, they would be multidisciplinarians as a result of a real organization of science. Although they do attend lectures on different aspects of science, but they don't fully understand it. Neither does the lecturer. Most lecturers are subjective. You know what that means? How to win friends and influence people, you know. That's all subjective type of lecturing.
But to apply the scientific method in all of your thinking, that'd be a mechanist.
Yeah, it'd be very
which is
difficult.
Not really given.
Almost impossible. Yeah. And people would reject you. Yeah. They'd have to. George Cryle tried to be mechanistic, so did Loeb. I find too many books are wordy. And they don't... I think that The Best That Money Can't Buy hits things right away. You don't have to wait to get there. It starts out with, you know, what is this? Oh. And there's some typos in the book, but that's... we paid people to do that, but they apparently didn't. An English major, punctuation, it becomes correct. Question mark, periods, dot, comma, all that is word structures, you know. Sometimes you lose your meaning if you don't know where those things go. Since I left school at an early age, there's a lot I didn't learn. But I don't worry about it. There are people that can do that very well, and let them do it. I don't feel inadequate. I feel that I've gained a lot of stuff, although I lost a lot of... I don't remember what Patrick Henry said, and I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? Since I look at presidents as insufficient to do the job, I no longer have respect for a president. Yeah. Do you understand that? They don't automatically, people, command respect. I'm using old words too, respect. What the hell does that mean? You look up to them? If you know more than they do about their lives, you can't look up to them. You can say that they have tools I'd like to learn. You can do that. A very good thing to do is fuck up occasionally. Yeah. So normal people say, ha, you fucked up there. It makes them feel better if you fuck up occasionally, not too perfect. Don't be right on the ball all the time. Or say, I'm not sure.